Welcome into the checklist, brought to you by Secure Mac. I'm Ken Ray.
I'm Nicholas Raba.
And I'm Nicholas Tacek.
Encryption is big news today for security professionals and for regular users too. More and more people are concerning themselves with keeping their communication secret, just between themselves and the person or people with whom they're communicating. Now, with more and more people turning to instant messaging as their primary mode of communication, more and more encrypted messaging apps are hitting the scene. So how do you pick one? And what do you need to know about the ones you pick? As you may have guessed, we're looking today at encrypted iOS messaging. Now, we got 3 items on today's checklist, one of which has 5 other items. Don't worry, there won't be a test, except for the test that is day-to-day communication, especially if you're trying to do it securely. Items on today's list: why anyone would want encrypted messaging in the first place, the pros and cons of specific encrypted messaging apps, and the apps we'll be covering are iMessage, WhatsApp, Signal, Silent Phone, and Glyph. And finally, we'll look at choosing the app that's right for you. So let's start with question number 1. I mean, I it's for me, it's like grocery lists. It's like, do you want to meet for dinner tonight? It's not things that I necessarily think I need to keep secure, but tell me, why does anybody want encrypted messaging apps in the first place?
Well, there are many reasons you might want a way to chat securely, but let's start with the most obvious one. It ideally prevents anyone else from reading your messages. Everyone from journalists communicating with anonymous sources to the average Joe concerned about his privacy. Anyone could benefit from encrypted chat. In an era of growing surveillance and rising threats from hackers who try to eavesdrop on digital communications for information, it's more important than ever to be thoughtful about the ways that we chat. When people hear encryption, though, the first thing that often comes to mind is a complicated process. Setting up a connection to anonymously browse the web through Tor, for example, takes a little bit of technical knowledge, and we talked about that in one of our previous shows. Messaging apps that encrypt their communications typically don't require too much additional user intervention, however. That makes it an easy way to reap the benefits of secure communications. So, as we look at the following apps, it's important to remember that you only gain the benefits of encryption when you and your messaging partner both use the same app. Otherwise, your message contents could still potentially suffer from exposure. However, some of the apps offering encryption are already quite popular. In fact, you might already be communicating through encryption.
Now, I know there's one in particular. We're all iPhone users here, as I imagine a lot of the people listening are as well. iMessage or Messages, that is automatically encrypted. I'm guessing that one of the cons you're going to hit is what you were talking about like it's encrypted as long as the person you're sending it to is using iMessage as well. Well, you know what? I'm jumping ahead. Talk to me about the pros and cons of iMessage.
This stock standard messaging service available on iOS devices and the Mac platform might seem unassuming, but it's packing a cryptological punch under the surface. When you send something to a friend through your iPhone's message app, you'll know it was sent via iMessage if the message bubble turns blue. However, if the device can't reach Apple's server, an iMessage will default automatically to the insecure SMS or text message. And you could disable this in your phone setting to enhance iMessage security. While the downside...
I'm sorry, hang on one second. So you can disable, as it stands right now, if I'm using an iPhone and I'm messaging somebody on an iPhone, it's going to automatically be iMessage, which is going to give me the blue bubble, and it's going to tell me that it's end-to-end encrypted. If I send it to an Android phone, then it's going to turn green, which is going to tell me it's not end-to-end encrypted. When you say I can disable this in iMessage, are you saying I can make it so that I can't message somebody who's using an Android phone? I can make it in iMessage that I can only send a message to an iMessage user?
Sorry to jump in here, but you can, if you disable the send as SMS option for messages, if you're trying to send a message to another to a user who has another iOS or Mac device and it can't go through as an iMessage for whatever reason, it will not default to a plain text message, an SMS, if you disable that. However, if you're still sending it to, say, an Android user, for example, it would still go through because there's a separate setting in the iOS settings for messages between sending as SMS if you don't have iMessage or MMS messaging, group messaging, the normal SMS stuff. So you'd still be able to text somebody via SMS if they're Android or whatever else for their carrier. But the security is just to if you're communicating with somebody else with an iOS or Mac device and you want to ensure that all of your messages going through to them are encrypted, it's just that extra layer of security there.
Wow. Okay.
A little confusing. Yeah, Apple's not making it super clear.
Right. So if my iPhone knows I'm messaging Nick and Nick has an iPhone, but for some reason it can't go through as an iMessage, then it's just not going to send it if I enable that. But if I'm sending a message to my friend Bob and my phone knows that Bob does not have an iPhone, it'll go ahead and send whatever I try to send.
Yes, presumably.
All right. Wow. Okay. That's wow. That's okay. Sorry to interrupt you, sir. You were saying.
No. And that's under your settings, under messages on your iOS. If you scroll down halfway, you'll see send as SMS, and it says send as SMS when iMessage is unavailable. Carrier messaging rates may apply. So that's where those settings are at.
All right. So we've actually spent a lot of time talking about the difference between sending messages via SMS versus via iMessage. I mean, the reason we're talking about iMessage so much is because of the end-to-end encryption that Apple has enacted or put in place in iMessage. Let's talk about why that's so much more secure. Talk to me about the end-to-end encryption part.
And that's a common theme with messages and some of these other apps, and we'll discuss those. For messages, in this setup, the only individuals who can read the contents of a message are the sender and the recipient. Not even Apple has access to the contents of an iMessage due to the way the application handles its security keys. While Apple retains the public keys for other devices to identify and communicate with yours, all the private keys used for encrypting and decrypting messages remain stored on your device. Additionally, the entire package is encrypted a second time when transmitted to and from Apple's servers. This dual layer of security makes it virtually impossible for anyone, including Apple, to spy on your messages. However, it's not a perfect solution, and not just because it limits to iOS users. In mid-2016, researchers from Johns Hopkins University developed an attack method for reading iMessages. The attack required a very high level of sophistication and would have required forged security certificates or direct access to Apple's servers. While they patched the specific holes identified, researchers noted that the overall encryption method Apple uses means iMessage could remain vulnerable to very high-level attacks. It also appeared that iMessages did not periodically change its encryption keys like some of the other apps do. However, iMessage remains a good free option for iOS users, though in some cases it may not provide the depth of protection one wants.
The next app we're going to look at is WhatsApp. This one, well, I'm going to make the mistake again, so I'm not. Tell me what you want to tell me about WhatsApp, and then I may have a question after.
Sounds like a plan. Perhaps by far the most popular messaging app out there that provides end-to-end encryption is WhatsApp. It's now used by over 1 billion people worldwide and recently rolled out some pretty robust end-to-end encryption of its own. Its encryption protocol was built by the same team, Open Whisper Systems, that created the Signal app, which we'll touch on a little bit later. Though it once had a subscription fee, WhatsApp is now completely free for use, includes the ability to make secure calls as well as the messaging capabilities. Maybe you already use WhatsApp. With so many users, chances are good you know at least one person who does. WhatsApp immediately has an advantage over iMessage. You can message users no matter what device or platform they're on. And you probably won't need to convince a friend to install the app if they have it already. One possible downside is that users must always be on the same version of the software for encryption to function. So, we kind of harp on you guys a lot in our episodes saying keep up to date with your software. Well, here's a real world example of why staying up to date with the latest version is important. In this case, the app encryption will not work unless both of you are running the same version. So overall, its end-to-end encryption provides the same deep level of protection from prying eyes. But WhatsApp also includes an additional feature: the ability to verify a unique security code. When you absolutely want to be confident that the encryption is in effect and the person you're communicating with is who they say they are, you can use this feature. Each device generates a unique 60-digit string and QR code for every chat. Users can then verify with one another that the codes match. If they match, then you know the valid encryption is in place. Recently, there was some controversy that erupted around the way WhatsApp handles public key mismatches. Other protocols, when a key change is detected, will block the key and the message altogether, which is the most secure way to handle that particular issue when it arises. However, because keys can change due to innocent reasons, such as getting a new phone or device, WhatsApp chooses to accept the new public key rather than implementing a block. Accepting a new public key can potentially open the door for sophisticated man-in-the-middle attack, though not the back door as described in a number of publications recently. It's still a design choice that reduces the app's overall security, but kind of balances that out in terms of ease of use for the app's users. In most other cases, however, WhatsApp will notify users when they lose encryption. While not a perfect solution, WhatsApp offers an accessible and user-friendly method for secure messaging across devices. It's also an excellent introduction to developing smart encryption habits, like verifying unique keys with your recipient.
You did not hit the question that I had.
All right.
2014, Facebook buys WhatsApp for $19 billion. $19 billion. Facebook owns that now. Should I feel better or worse that it's owned by another big company, a company that actually tends to like information a whole lot?
That's a tough question.
That's not accusing Facebook of anything exactly, but I remember when Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion, a lot of people did have concern.
Yeah, and that's understandable. Again, that's kind of it's a balance. Yes, Facebook likes to collect a lot of information on people. However, on the flip side of the coin, with the end-to-end encryption built in, they're not reading your messages that are being sent with WhatsApp.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, in the end, you're going to have to trust somebody to be creating the app that you're going to be using to communicate securely.
Right.
Personally, I would rather trust, as kind of counterintuitive as it sounds, I would rather trust the big company that may also like big data, just because they're more likely to be held accountable and stay on top of security issues as they arise, versus a smaller, no-name person working out of, their garage or whatever, where they might not have a great grasp on security concepts. They might have goofed up on the encryption code. I would much rather trust the larger team of programmers to get it right, in terms of my personal opinion on that.
You do kind of have to figure that Facebook does want me to keep using Facebook. And if they do something that's absolutely, and keep using WhatsApp and keep using every other service that they're introducing, it seems like every 25 minutes. And so if they suddenly started, doing something that would call into question the credibility of WhatsApp, I mean, that calls into question the credibility of a whole bunch of stuff from Facebook. Because when you talk about the small organization run out of somebody's garage, they could even be tip top as far as security is concerned, but probably they need money more than Facebook does, certainly. So even if they're totally on the up and up, somebody comes along and waves $500 million at them, then who does your information belong to at that point? And don't misunderstand when I say that about Facebook. I mean, the same could be said for Apple, certainly. The difference being Apple says repeatedly they're not at all interested in your personal information, whereas Facebook very much wants to know my birthday, my mom's birthday, my best friend's birthday, as much stuff as they can. So that was not to cast aspersion on WhatsApp. It was just sort of raise another question, I suppose.
But hey, maybe they wanted to make their own standalone messaging app even more secure. To message on Facebook now, you need the messaging app if you're using a mobile device outside of the standard website. So maybe they bought WhatsApp so they can increase their own messaging platform's privacy features. Maybe?
Oh, we could sit and wonder about why Facebook does what Facebook does all day long. And then by the time we're done with that conversation, they would have changed it again. Sorry, I have a problem. Let's move on to another one of the messaging apps that we're hitting today, Signal.
So many consider Signal to be a gold standard for secure messaging service, and for a good reason. It's the first app on our list which is completely open source, a significant advantage for a service like this. While we might feel okay putting our trust in Apple to handle our information safely, for example, there's no way for the average user to know what exactly is going on inside software like iMessage or WhatsApp. Signal changes that by being open source. Anyone can vet their claims and ensure the encryption functions as it should. Signal Message is free, and like WhatsApp, it calls itself device agnostic. In other words, iOS users can easily message Android users and vice versa. Signal delivers one of the most robust approaches to security. Messages are encrypted in transit. Signal never has access to the keys, and the app takes a hard stance when keys don't match. Signal will block messages if it detects problems with the keys. It will prohibit access to old messages when there's possibility that a hacker has stolen a user's key. The app applies these same rigorous protocols to its calling functions as well. Users can easily speak privately through Signal. You could even set a self-destruct timer of sorts on your messages. After a set period, you could automatically wipe all your Signal messages. Like most of these apps, communicating securely with other devices does require that both parties install Signal. Overall, Signal is an excellent choice from a security standpoint. Having suffered no major security breaches or problems thus far, even the NSA has recognized how robust Signal's protocols are.
So one thing that was kind of in the news recently was the Vault 7 leak by WikiLeaks, which was a treasure trove of CIA information on hacking and what they're doing to attack apps and encryption and steal information, all that good stuff. The problem is a lot of the reporting was kind of sensationalized without any real digging into kind of the truth of it. Basically, the Vault 7 leak showed that CIA, NSA, attempted to bypass the encryption before it was able to take place, end-to-end encryption for Signal, WhatsApp, a number of these secure messaging apps. So a lot of sensationalist news reports on it said, "Oh, WhatsApp was hacked, Signal was hacked, they're not secure, don't use them," and that's wrong. It's straight up wrong. The Vault 7 showed that those encryption mechanisms could be bypassed if there was already access to the device before the message was sent. So there would either be physical access to the device, or the device had to be compromised before that in the form of malware. In either of those cases, all security is thrown out the window. It doesn't matter what app you're talking about. If somebody has access to your device physically, or they've hacked it and installed malware on it, they have the capability to read your messages, all that stuff. Any of those things you say are a bad thing. Avoiding the encryption, bypassing it, whatever. That's kind of what happens if your device is owned. If your device is, somebody else completely takes it over. So it's not in any way disparaging to those secure chat programs. They were not, people weren't hacking WhatsApp servers or Signal's encryption mechanism itself. It was, if your phone or device is previously hacked, then all bets are off as far as the security of anything you're going to subsequently send with that device.
And then that can happen through all the ways that we've talked about in weeks past, everything from actually giving somebody physical access to your device to falling prey to a phishing scam.
Exactly. And that's why a lot of journalists and security researchers alike have been concerned about new laws about handing over your devices at border checks or going through security, stuff like that. Because if you're handing over physical access to your device and it's out of your sight for any amount of time,
right,
who knows what is happening to it. So yeah, that's where unfortunately WikiLeaks chose to sensationalize the claim a bit from the reality. I mean, yes, there was a lot of information released in the Vault 7 leak, kind of not anything beyond what would already be expected of the country's spy agency, but at the same time, yes, they use technology and hacking tools in order to do their job. The unfortunate thing is that a lot of people will just take those headlines at face value and say, "Oh, I shouldn't use a secure messaging app because it's hacked anyway," and that's not the truth of it.
And other companies will look at the data and they'll say, okay, well, this was fixed then, this was fixed here, and maybe enhance their security overall to try to protect their users more and more.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions. Well, I guess one question. In the wake of the Vault 7 stuff, there was actually an interesting article that I read, and we've got 2 more apps to hit, and we're coming to the rest of the show. But since you mentioned Vault 7, I believe it was, I read some article based on a comment that Edward Snowden made, where basically they were saying, hey, this proves that security is getting better. Because the kind of thing you're talking about, they weren't able to tap into the WhatsApp servers, or they weren't able to tap into the Signal servers. Instead, they were having to actually target individuals in ways that things like Prism or programs like the programs that were revealed by Snowden back in 2013, I guess. That sort of dragnet operation is not the kind of thing that we were seeing here. What we were seeing here is, okay, they want to find out about one guy, so they're going after this one guy this way, as opposed to they want to find out about one guy, so they're collecting information on everybody. I mean, does that actually sound like, in sort of a weird backwards way, does that mean security is kind of getting better?
Oh, for sure. Basically, after the Snowden leaks back in 2013, it was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of security companies where they suddenly realized that, they didn't need to just protect their data against, hackers or, kind of theoretical attacks, that you had to kind of assume that the app needed to protect its data even when it was on the device. Before being sent, in case that it was a situation like that where there was a massive dragnet operation going on. So security significantly improved in the wake of that, and in the years that followed, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a top priority, because unfortunately security never seems to be a top priority for a lot of these companies, but it definitely has more importance and kind of better. I guess the company is treating it a lot higher priority than they used to, and they're understanding that it's very important for themselves as a company and for their users, which is a good thing. And I guess the Vault 7 leaks kind of go to show, yes, a lot of companies tightened things down in the years since the original Snowden leaks, and they're making the job harder for people who are trying to circumvent those security mechanisms.
The next app we want to hit actually has sort of an oxymoronic name. Silent Phone. Talk to me about that one, guys.
Well, if the security of your phone calls is as important to you as the security of your text messages or your communications that way, Silent Circle's Silent Phone app is potentially worth your attention as well. The app was granted a certification and clearance for use within the U.S. government due to the strength of its encryption protocols. That alone speaks volumes about the effort that's gone into the technology behind Silent Phone. This is a tier above WhatsApp and for more hardcore users than Signal targets. With these added features comes a price tag. Silent Phone requires a monthly subscription fee of about $10. Like the other apps we've discussed, Silent Phone enables secure calling, messaging, and the ability to share files up to 100 megabytes in size. Targeting enterprise users, Silent Phone is also easy to install across a wide number of devices. Perhaps most interestingly, however, is the extra control it gives users over message lifespan. Similar to the way Signal allows messages to self-destruct, a user can set their own burn timer within the app. When the timer expires, messages disappear from both your device and the recipient's device as well. This method is the most secure way to ensure no trace of your communication remains. Users will find the normal messaging features here. Don't expect to find emojis, bells and whistles, all the other stuff, no stickers, that kind of stuff that comes with newer versions of messages. As a downside, calling is only free to other Silent Phone subscribers. Users require credit to call outside of their network, and the same security features may not fully apply if you call an unsecured user. Kind of like we discussed with all these apps, it requires both parties to be using the same app to enjoy the security protection. Due to its subscription, Silent Phone also has a smaller install base, but for those who are serious about their encryption, it's worth a look.
And then finally, the last app we're looking at today, Glyph.
The lesser-known app, Glyph, is also an option. It receives less attention because the app was not built primarily for messaging, but it was initially a way to facilitate Bitcoin transactions. It's free to download. Glyph relies on an in-app purchase model to upsell users on different services, such as email cloaking and the ability to securely transfer files over the app, a feature which, as we've mentioned, is already available for free in Signal. As with other options, Glyph only works with other Glyph users. Therefore, it's not the most convenient option available. It also doesn't rely on the same level of encryption as the other apps we've covered. Through a peer-to-peer connection, Glyph claims its messages are encrypted by SSL over the wire and through standard AES 256 encryption on your device. This is a big step down from the type protocols run by Signal, Silent Phone, and even iMessage. Overall, Glyph focuses more on delivering a Bitcoin marketplace experience with added messaging features. Users shouldn't rely on it if they want true privacy.
So that's interesting. You actually already started to hit on the next question. We've run across a whole series of apps here. What should I think about when I'm choosing which one or which ones are right for me?
Well, ultimately, how you decide to protect your messages from prying eyes or surveillance involves carefully weighing the pros and cons of each app. Every iPhone user can enjoy the benefits of iMessage security, but it's far from the best choice out there. Additionally, while many people globally take advantage of WhatsApp for peace of mind, its closed-source nature and controversial design choices have made it potentially risky. It should be clear that for true privacy and safety, users must dig a little deeper. Signal offers more verifiable protections, but it's not as widely used yet. Meanwhile, Silent Phone may not be as well polished yet, and it still offers excellent protective ability and improves regularly. I guess the bottom line is that choose the app that's right for you. Choose the app that's right for the person you're trying to communicate with. If we're just talking about your day-to-day communications and you want some modicum of security in it, iMessage should be fine for you and your family, your friends. If you're leaking government secrets, or you're a whistleblower at Big Tobacco or something like that, you're going to want something a little more secure, and that's when you'd want to be looking at something like WhatsApp or Signal. One final thought that kind of goes back to one of our previous episodes on making sure your child's device was set up safely and securely. If you're a parent and your child has an iOS device, even if you don't choose to install and use an encrypted messaging app yourself, it's important to understand what they are, how they work, because if you spot one of those apps on your child's phone, you'll be able to recognize the app, maybe restrict access if you choose to. It might be an opportunity to have a good conversation with them as well. Just because obviously, as with a lot of things we've covered, the apps could be used for good and for maybe not so good in situations like that. So it's just something to keep in mind if you are a parent with a child and you might find one of these apps on there.
This is a weird episode. It's like,
It is.
you know those dolls, where you open a doll and there's another doll and there's another doll?
The nesting
Yeah.
dolls.
The nesting dolls. Yeah, this is like a can of worms, and you open it up and there are worms, but then there's another can of worms. And then you open that and hey, look, worms, and still another can of worms. Bottom line, though, what we actually covered today, a bunch of the apps and a bunch of the reasons you might want to, look towards one as opposed to another, and sort of some of the general topics that we covered are going to be available on our website as well. The website for this episode and for all the past episodes and any episodes to come, securemac.com/checklist. That website again is securemac.com/checklist. If you have a question for us or there's a topic you'd like to hear us hit in the future, we do have an email address. It is checklist@securemac.com. The address again is checklist@securemac.com. And if you have trouble remembering that, do remember this. You are listening to The Checklist by Secure Mac. And we'll talk to you next week.